Oh, thank you. Sorry I'm late. Sorry for making you wait. 10 people. Very interested in finding out about Bharata as a deer. Maybe I need to... I can't see anything in the chat, so I didn't know anybody was here. 1 second. Did you guys see that I just posted a HHH? Not that it wouldn't be kind of interesting to not have the chat happen. But hey, it's Waylon. Okay, so I think I'm just going to need to do this. And this. All right. We can begin. So, Bharata. I mean, we had that long session last week explaining Bharata's relationship with the deer. And it's not really possible to do it twice, to like recap it. Or put it twice. But let's at least read through the English so that we get our heads in the right space for this new part of the story. Let me set that up. That's going to be here, right? Right. And you guys probably want this at a size you can see. And I can also take off my glasses. So, but one morning in the third Muhurta, after attending his daily necessities and bathing, he incanted sacred syllables with most of his body submerged in that great river. Just then, O King, a doe came all alone towards the river because she was thirsty. Just as she concentrated on drinking from the river's pool, a terrifying lion roared resoundingly from nearby. What's the name for the doe? Hari. What's the name for the lion? Hari. When the timid doe heard that, her fearful eyes became terrified. Fear of the lion perplexed her mind and flooded her visions. Forgetting her thirst, she instantly leapt across the river in shock. She was pregnant, but the force of her terrified leap pushed her baby out of her womb, and it fell into the river. Losing her baby from that terrified leap was a terrible injury and depression. Separated from her flock, the predator soon pounced on and killed that black doe. Krishna. That's how she's referred to there. It's English. The sage King Bharata was amazed to spot that baby deer pathetically floating in the river. I mean, that was hard to read. Let's change it to... Was amazed to see the baby deer pathetically floating. I'm pathetically struggling to float in the river. Quote, it's a motherless orphan and needs a family's compassion. Thinking this, he caught the baby and brought it to his ashram. Okay, so what's happened so far? He's doing his daily meditation, and a deer comes to drink at the river. No big deal. But then all of a sudden, a lion roars right behind her. She freaks out, jumps across the river, has not a miscarriage, but has impromptu delivery. I don't know what the right term is for that. And then lands on the other side of the river. Lion jumps after her, kills her very soon. Then he sees that this baby survived and is in the river. And he thinks, this is an orphan, and I should take care of this baby. So he brought it to his ashram. Oh, he took this very far. He thought, I should take care of this orphan. So he took it very far. He became the orphan's mom and dad and everything. He took this very far. Considering the baby deer to be his own, he would nourish, protect, love, and console it. And then we can't skip the Sanskrit on that because it's so nice. Tat poshana palana lalana prinana. Poshana palana lalana prinana anudhyanena. Even when he wasn't doing this, he was thinking about it. Little by little, his personal responsibilities and duties for worshipping the Prime Person began to seem like nuisances. And within days, he completely abandoned his practices in the water. So he said, I'm not going back there where the lions come. I'm not taking this little deer back there. But that was his vow, was that he would sit in the water at sunrise. So he gave up on that right away. And then this is what he thought. Oh, this is alarming, he thought. The force of the churning wheels of fate have deprived this pathetic baby deer of his flock, friends and family, leaving him with nothing but me. I am his only mother, father, sibling, friend, or companion. He doesn't even realize that anyone else could be any of these things. He wasn't born into a town or a flock and then got orphaned. He was just an orphan from birth. As soon as he opened his eyes, he had no mother. The only thing that he ever had from birth is Bharata. I submitted a question about who this deer is and what happened to the deer after this story. And the reply was, we don't know, but he must have been Hari directly, or Hari's energy, or some manifestation of Hari. Because it says he's a manifestation of Hari. But he's pretty amazing. This deer's pretty amazing, actually. He doesn't even realize that anyone else could be any of these things. All of his hopes rest in me. One must nourish, protect, love, and console their dependents without resentment. Nourish, protect, love. Poshana, palana, prinana, lalana, anasuyana. Actually, this is really the thing. I just realized this because of interactions that I've had recently. Most people do Poshana, palana, prinana, lalana with suyata. They'll be nice to you, they'll take care of you, they'll befriend you, but they don't want to. They do it because they need to. Because they want some goal. They need something, they want something. And so you're part of the process of them getting it. And so that's why they will prina, napala, nalala, naposhana. Feed you, hug you, whatever. But if you don't do the thing that they want, then they get upset with you. So what Bharat Maharaj says is, that's not the way that a person should treat a dependent. They should poshana, palana, prinana, lalana, anasuyata, without a grudge. So he's not bearing a grudge towards this deer who is interfering with his practice. One must nourish, protect, love, and console their dependents without resentment. To neglect a dependent is a disgraceful flaw. That's also worth stating 17 times. Sharyano peksha dosha vidush. Sharanyo peksha. To neglect, upeksha, somebody who's dependent on you, sharanya, is dosha, a flaw, a vidusha dosha, a very serious flaw. Sharanyo upeksha dosha vidush. So I must take care of him. And he continues to think, this is definitely the way of the civilized Aryans, and also it is the way of the saintly Upasamashilas, who have retired from action. They consider compassion for the pathetic to be more important than their own goals. So he's saying, compassion to this deer is more important than my yoga. And therefore neglect themselves to help others. So then everything that he did, sitting, sleeping, walking, bathing, eating, and so on, he did with the baby deer. His heart was captivated by affection. He was afraid of animals like wolves and dogs, so he would take the baby deer with him, which is funny for a person who lives in the forest. That's why you don't go and live in the forest before you're not when you're still scared of animals. This was one of the things somebody said to somebody somewhere, and these things I have in my memory banks. Somebody came to somebody's kutir. Thank you, Chio. Somebody came to somebody's kutir to do bhajan, to do practice. Kuti is like a little tiny hut that's out in the middle of nowhere. And then the sadhu said, okay, there's another kuti next to me. It's empty, you can stay in that one. So then after some time, he went over to that other kuti to look in on this new person and see what's up. And the guy is like cleaning out, like trying to get rid of the spiders and snakes. And he says, just go home. Just go home. You can't even do this. How are you going to do any meditation in the forest if you're thinking about if you're worried about the spiders and snakes? So anyway, I don't want to get digressed. He was afraid of, why was Bharata now afraid of wolves and dogs? Because he had a deer, he had a baby to take care of. So he's not afraid for himself about wolves and dogs, but because he's taking care of a baby now, all of a sudden he's afraid of the animals. He was afraid of animals like wolves and dogs, so he would take the baby deer with him whenever he needed to go into the woods for grass, flowers, wood, leaves, fruits, roots, or water. While on the paths, his overwhelmingly affectionate heart was always delighted to be diverted wherever the deer wanted to go. He would carry the deer on his shoulders or keep him on his lap or chest to hug, filled with absolute joy. He's so cute, those little deers, they're so cute. He would interrupt his practices constantly to stand up and search for the deer. Waylon, if you're still here, this reminded me of trying to do yoga when the kids are around and things like that. He would interrupt his practices constantly to stand up and search for the deer. That's what happens all the time when you have a kid. You have to stop doing whatever you're doing to make sure the kid's okay. Finding him, the protector of the land would regain his lost peace of mind and grant blessings. May you always have good fortune, my child. Swastistat vats. Swastistat vats. I think it should be swastitat. I have to look up my grammars. Swastistat vats te sarvata. That's what he would say to his baby, which means be safe and sound all the time. But when he couldn't find the deer, sometimes he wouldn't find the deer, then his mind would become tormented, like a needy man who suddenly lost all his wealth. Separated from the baby deer, pitiful and extreme anxiety afflicted him. Falling into great bewilderment, he lamented intensely and cried out, "Oh, that poor, pathetic, motherless dear child! Oh, my uncivilized mind is deceitful like a hunter. Thinking me to be like himself, he trusted me. But I failed to do my duty. Let him forgive all this like a great person and come back." He failed to do his duty. He's going to let his child get into danger. That's always, I mentioned this last time too. That always makes me laugh when people get their child back from like danger, like being lost in the mall or whatever. Then they get mad at the child. But I think you should really get mad at yourself. I'll probably find him kept hidden and safe by Providence, wandering and eating grasses in the safe groves around this ashram. But then when he doesn't find them over there, he says, "Oh no, maybe not. Maybe he's being eaten by the wolves and dogs who hunt in packs, or by animals who hunt in pairs. Or who hunt alone. Alas, the divine sun sets. It makes everything safe for everyone in 3 worlds except me. The one entrusted to me by the Doe Mother has not returned. Maybe the deer prince will return to the one who neglected to take care of him, making me happy with all the different endearing things a deer does." That's so cool. Making me happy with all the different endearing things a deer does. Dispelling the anxiety of his relatives. So this is him freaking out when he can't find his baby deer. When I pretended to close my eyes. Now, what are those cute deer things that he's done? He remembers too. When I pretended to close my eyes in samadhi, he would get very scared. Moved by love, he would prod me with the tips of his soft dappled horns. When I reprimanded him for spoiling all the offerings placed on the sacred grass, he became so fearful and immediately stopped playing. He sat still and silent like the child of a sage. Oh, but what's this? The very austere earth rewards my austerities by decorating herself with the footprints of the small, beautiful, blessed, soft hoofs of the unassuming child of the black doe. She shows wealth's path to my pathetic wealth bereft self. The learned who desire paradise or liberation perform ceremonies for the gods everywhere she is so ornamented. Maybe this moon, blessed Lord of the seas, who compassionately protects the pathetic, protects this baby deer, who lost his mother to a fearsome lion. Somehow this flood of nectar light, made more affectionate, cooling, and peaceful by reflecting from the moon's face, brings peace to the scorched land-lotus heart of the person burning in an inferno of being separated from his child. So he found the deer in the moonlight. Thus his heart became troubled. So now this is the statement 26 where Shukadev explains a lot. So he says, thus his heart became troubled by desires for things that are unattainable. What does he mean? He means you want somebody to be safe. You can't be safe in the material world. So when you want somebody to be safe, you're going to be in anxiety. That doesn't mean that you can get away with being delinquent in your duty. Sharnyopeksha dosha vidush. You understand? You have to take pains. So some people will just say, wow, it's real pain to have a kid. I'm not going to have a kid. That's kind of okay. At least you decided not to have a kid. Okay, you decided not to have a kid. But when you have a kid and then you realize this is just a pain and this is just a pain. So I'm not going to deal with this. And then you let your kid get into dangers. That's not okay. You're not a yogi or a spiritualist by doing that. That's a serious vidush. Whether you are a yogi or a regular person, doesn't matter. Bharata said that. This pertains to Aryans and also to Upashamashila people. So, now Shuka explains his positive uncommenced karma took the form of a baby deer and disturbed the beginnings of his yoga and its practices distinguished by devotion to Bhagavan. So he says that this is a positive incident. It's a su-karma, su-arabdha karma. So this incident with the deer is a positive thing. Even though it disturbed the yoga, it only disturbs the practice stage of the yoga. But it's a positive thing because it will enhance the perfected stage of the yoga. That is something to think about when you're a mom in Wayland's yoga class, or when you're a mom with your meditation beats or whatever, or a dad. This is disturbing the practice part of the yoga, but it will enhance the perfection part of the yoga, especially if you're doing a yoga which is about bhakti or devotion. Because what is disturbing the beginning practice of your yoga is devotion to another person. So that's going to actually be positive. That's why we shouldn't think, these responsibilities are a pain in the neck. I should give them up and do my sadhanas. They're not a pain in the neck. They're going to empower your sadhanas. They're going to give you a more powerful result from the sadhana. How else could he develop such... It could not be a negative karma. Because then, first of all, you wouldn't have intimacy. You never get love and affection from bad karma. You always get hatred and division from bad karma. How else could he develop such intimacy with the baby deer? Someone from a different family and an entire different species, even after completely giving up his own love-born children, which are so difficult to let go of. It also must have been some kind of special, unique arrangement, because it's obviously not a fault or a flaw. He was able to give up all his attachments. How did he then develop a new attachment afterwards? It must not have been a negative thing. So, while the beginnings of his yoga were intercepted and interrupted, the sage king Bharata thus passed his time developing attachment to a dear child by Poshana Palana Prinana Lalana. By feeding, protecting, loving, and consoling it, while forgetting and neglecting himself. But somebody didn't forget about Bart, and that is Mr. Death. Meanwhile, indomitable fate approached like a voracious, lightning-fast serpent approaching a mouse hole. Bharata forgot about himself, but unfortunately Mr. Death did not. Unfortunately for the deer, but I don't even know if this deer is an actual Jivatma. When that happened, the deer came to his side and wept, just like a child would. When he died, the deer came to his side just like children come to the side of a parent. Observing this with a fixated gaze, Bharata's feelings were completely invested into the deer. When he again came out into this world, he did so through the body of a deer. Yet, although his birth as a deer seemed like a common principle of karma, it was not. For although he died, he did not lose any memory of his past life. Now, today's new material. I'm sorry to hear that, sunset. So now the new material. It was Bharata's life as a deer. Tatra pihava atmano mrigatva karanam bhagavad aradhana samihanubhavena smritya brisham anutapyamana aha. But then, from the wisdom of having had such enthusiastic love for Bhagavan, he remembered what had caused him to become a deer. So even then, he reiterates, when he became a deer, he was able to remember mrigatva karanam, the thing that had made him into a deer. And the reason for his ability to remember that is Bhagavad Aradhana Samihana Anubhavana. The Bhagavat Aradhana means to love Bhagavan, and Samihana means enthusiastic. So he had developed very enthusiastic love for Bhagavan. And Anubhav means the character or nature that results from something. So Anubhav usually means the result of some wisdom or the result of some knowledge or experience. So, as a result of all this affection that he had developed for Bhagavan, he had tons of affection for the deer, but he had tons of affection for Bhagavan. So he didn't just completely forget. Even though he gets born as a deer, he doesn't completely forget his other passion, which is Bhagavan. And so that's why he doesn't forget that he's a bhakta of Bhagavan and now he's a deer. You see, you will whatever your mind is like Play-Doh, and it gets pressed by the different experiences that get pushed into it through the senses. And so it gets little indentations in it. And those are called memories. You can then run the mind over the impression and experience the same sensation almost. So when you go through death, it gets squeezed and kneaded and all that kind of stuff to fit into a new body. But some of the impressions which are very deep, only the very deepest impressions remain in the kneaded Play-Doh. Bharata had very deep impression for Bhagavan. So even after being kneaded and put into a the deer's body, he still had that impression that he's a Bhakta of Bhagavan. And so he remembered the whole scenario. Extremely regretful, he thought, Anutapyamana, he thought like this. Oh, Alf, I always think of you when I hear these words. This is a good one for you, Alf. Aho kashtam. Aho, you like aho and bo. Bo is our favorite. But aho is the second favorite. And then kashta, this is a new one for you. Kashta means crap. So aho kashtam is kind of like, oh crap. Or kashta is like something irritating and stinky, smelly. So, oh, what a pain. So that was Bharata's thought. Oh, crap. Oh, what a pain. Brashtoham atmavat. Brashtoham. I broke myself. Brashtoham atmavatam anupatat. Yad vimukta samasta sangasya vivikta punyaranya sharanya syatmavata abhani sarvesham atmanam bhagavati vasudeve tad anushravana manasa sankirtana radhana nusmarana bhyo gena shunya sakala yamena kalina samaveshtitam samahitam kartsneya manas tatu punar Mama buddhasyaran mrigasudam anuparisusrava. Oh, what a pain! I've wandered from the path of self-possession, a path for which I sacrificed all my relationships, for which I lived alone in a simple forest with my heart fully and completely invested and involved in striving to fully and constantly deliberate, worship, glorify, respect, and hear about the self-possessed self of all selves, Bhagavan Vasudeva. Because of a dear child, my foolishness has cast me far off that path. So if you spent a lot of money on something and then you break it, like I remember I bought a laptop at some point, like maybe 10 years ago. And then the first thing that happened basically is my daughter took a screwdriver and hit the screen with it. And she was like two years old. That feeling is like, hey, I just spent $2,000 on this thing and it's broken. People that I remember also when I was a kid, I was driving a van and I pulled away from the curb and somebody's sports car smashed into me. And the guy was really upset because this is expensive car just got into an accident. So there's a similar dynamic here that Bharata is saying. I invested so much into this project, and I just failed at it. How much did he invest? I gave up everything. I gave up my home, my wife, my kids. I gave up everything. I gave up all my relationships to pursue this thing. And then I let myself get distracted by a deer. I went through all this trouble of living in a forest all by myself so that I could achieve this goal, and then I got distracted because of this deer. But then the way that he says why he got distracted is also very important. Very important. He doesn't really say because of this deer. He says because of my foolishness. He doesn't blame the deer. It's because of the dear child that was instrumental to my foolishness. My foolishness cast me off the path. The deer was just the way that my foolishness cast me off the path. Was he cast off the path? What did Shuka just say before? So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, so he was cast off the path, so he shouldn't have taken in this deer. Well, if we think like that, then what did Shuka just say in text 26 of the previous chapter? Shuka said this is Sua Rabda Karma, this is a good thing. Why did Shuka say this deer is Hari, this lion is Hari? Why did Shuka say, what Shuka clarified, which Bharata doesn't realize right now, is the beginning of your yoga was messed up so that the end of your yoga will be more glorious. If you work hard to get something, it's better than if you get something really easy. I see that all the time. It's not just in how courtship works, but it's also in how education works. If student asks a question, teacher gives an answer, student forgets the answer. That's case one. That happens most of the time. Student asks question, teacher gives answer, student ignores it or forgets it. Case two, student asks question, teacher asks question to the question. Student has to work. Teacher gives answer. Student takes that answer seriously. So everything was going way too smooth for Bharata. It wasn't going to lead to a very glorious goal. So Hari intervened. What's wrong with being a deer? You can't do your practices very well. There's advantages to being a human, which is the ability of the brain to process words. But let's see what he does as a deer. There's nothing wrong with being a deer if you want to eat grass or frolic or be cute. Then the deer is better to be than a human, except that damn lions are terrifying. But so every species is best equipped for some particular forte. But the human species is best equipped for intellectual work. And since the Vedas are a transmission of spirit through word, the human form is uniquely advantageous for spiritual progress. Yellow, very good, Alf. Yes. So the next thing he says is Ityevam Nigudha Nirveda. I have a question about this. When you actually, well, maybe I should read it to you first. Ityevam Nirgudo Nirvedo Vishrija Mrigim Matram Punar Bhagavat Chetram Upashamashila Munigana Daitam Shilagramam Pulasya Pulahashramam Kalanjarat Pratyajagama. So this says, alone and unknown to anyone, alone and unknown, he left his dear mother. This is unnecessary. Also, the thus is unnecessary. Oh no, it's evam, right? Okay, thus, thinking like that, that's why he left his dear mother alone and unknown. That's important, as I said before, as Rishabhadev's story illustrated. You can't just leave something and leave a note about where you're going. You have to leave it. Thus, alone and unknown, he left his dear mother. So as he's born, he looks around, he thinks, oh, I'm a deer. That's a problem. I gave up everything to pursue Bhagavad Bhakti. Now I'm a deer. Let me make the best of this. So he just snuck off he got away from his flock and his mother, and he went back to Bhagavat Kshetra. You can see many. You could see this happening many times if you live in a temple or in a dham, in a sacred place. You see a lot of animals like this. Actually, there's animals that are clearly not animals. So he went back to the place from Kalanjara, which is where he was born. And apparently, it's a mountain, but I don't know where. And apparently, it's close to Shalagram. From Kalanjara, he returned to Shalagram, the ashram of Pulastyan Pulaha, which is high up in the mountains, which is dear to sages who have pacified their behavior. So he thought, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to that ashram where I was. That's interesting. Huh? As soon as he was born as a deer, he went back to his ashram. Tasmin apikalam pratikshamana sangascha brisham udvigna atma sahascharya shukshaparnatrina viruta vartamano mrigatva nimitta vasanam eva ganayam mrigashariram tirtodaka klinam utsasarja. There, he could only wait for his time to come, because a deer doesn't really have the various capacities for doing the dhyana and anusmara and any of the aradhanas or any of the worships. But he did as much as he possibly could. So he went back to the ashram and he ate the way that a sadhu would eat. He was very concerned not to develop any connections. So he became traumatized that his connection to somebody else had diverted his yoga. So now he's kind of PTSD about connections. So he's an uber timid deer. If anybody showed up at the ashram, he would get the hell out. If any other animals came by, he would leave. If any other deers were around, he would run away. If any sadhus came, he would get out. And then come back when they're gone. Because he didn't want chance of anything like that happening again. Now, why? Why not? He was very concerned not to develop any connections and kept the self as his only friend. That was his idea. I don't want to be distracted from Bhagavan Vasudeva. It's not actually a distraction to develop a relationship with a deer or with somebody else, because that other person is a ray of Bhagavan Vasudeva. However, it actually is when you don't realize it, when you don't know, when you don't experience that person is a ray of Bhagavan Vasudeva, then you do get distracted from Bhagavan Vasudeva by relations to others. So out of his determination to only have friends with the self, and Bhagavan Vasudeva is within the self. So out of his desire to only be friends to himself, he decided not to be friends with anybody. Eating only the dried up leaves, grasses, and herbs, he counted the days until he would be able to stop being a deer. All that he could do was wait, in other words. So he just ate like a sadhu and waited. In the sacred waters, he gave up his deer form. I don't know if that means that he drowned himself, but I don't think so. I think that when it was time to die, because it says he's waiting, right? When it's time to die, he went into the water just like he used to do. In that very same place where he used to do his sun mantra practice. He then left his body as a deer. So then, that is the end of chapter 8. And in chapter 9, we're going to hear about his next human birth, which is also going to be a trip. And I don't really know why he wasn't as PTSD in the same way about relationships. So in the next life, he still has this post-traumatic stress disorder about relationships, but it doesn't make him a hermit. It makes him pretend to be retarded, so that people just give up on him. I guess it could be because as a deer, he was able to sneak off, but as a human, it's more difficult. I guess. I don't know. Maybe I should ask this question. So that's what we'll look at next week. We'll look at chapter 9. We'll start hearing about his life. That life is called the retarded Bharata, Judd Bharata. I mean, that's not his real name, but that's the way people who know the story from Bhagavatam and know all 3 lives refer to him as the Judd Bharata. Any questions about this affair, this whole story? Let me see what you guys may have written already. Any questions? Yeah, the deer is a very special person. All right. Then next week we'll find out about Bharata's next life. Okay, we have questions. Devotion to anything is good. Devotion to anything is good, but there's good, better, and best. So devotion to something that is not fitting, the devotion to some, for example, devotion to a mafia guy, it's still devotion, but it's not a great idea. Devotion to a gangster, devotion to a crackhead, devotion to a violent man, it's not a great idea. Devotion is better than not devotion. But devotion would be best towards somebody who deserves devotion. And how is somebody deserving of devotion? They themselves are devoted. So this is why ultimately it's only devotion to Vishnu, which is really truly proper, because nobody else really is capable of being devoted. Because everybody else has holes and emptiness and needs and hungers that they need you for, and that they will eat you for. Okay? How can we be sure to remember what we've learned? You think about it. I can't remember the Sanskrit here, but the simple thing is here. It's called Kirtan Shravanam Kirtanam Smaranam. So it starts where you hear something, right? You learn something, then Kirtan, try to say it, try to express it in words. Then it becomes something that you are able to say, not just able to hear. Then you won't forget it. And then think about it. Once you can say it or express it, then think about it. Think about it. When you're in this room, think about it. What does it look like in this room in relation to these walls? And when you're in that other room, then what does the same idea look like over there? With these people, with those people, what does this idea look like in relation to this and that? That's anusmarana. If you do those things, then you won't forget what you hear. I don't know if you meant that or if you meant in your next life. And there really is no way to not forget what you did in your next life, unless you're very, very, very special and you hardly really even are having a next life. Because your next life wouldn't be your next life if you remembered the previous life. There's a reason why you have a next life. It's because you want a next life. You don't really want to remember. It's going to screw up your role. Samurai. So eventually we should get away from any personal attachment. I don't know what you mean. The Bhagavan Vasudeva is personal. But if you mean eventually we should get away from any attachment to anything extrinsic from Bhagavan, then yes. So then if you want to say, is Bharata, this is really what it comes down to, honestly. The story is basically always used as to say that you should not have anything to do with anyone. But that's really not what the story is all about. Has Shukadeva in any place condemned Bharata Maharaj or spoken bad of Bharata Maharaj? Only Bharata speaks bad of himself because he feels bad, because he invested a lot of money in something that he broke. In his eyes, it's broke. He invested a lot and he screwed it up, as far as he knows. But Shukadeva does nothing but praise Bharata. He calls him the sage king. Bharata was able to go to the forest because he was very dutiful. He was the king of the people for thousands of years, and he took care of people the way you take care of kids. He got into their affairs, he got onto their level, he did things that they wanted to do, he took care of them and taught them what they wanted to know. That's Bharata. That's why he's able to be Bharata later. Because he dealt with people lovingly and affectionately. Then this deer comes up, and people want to say, see, that's bad for Bharata. It's not bad for Bharata. That's the point. This is not bad for Bharata. Bharata is not an example of a failed bhakta. Bharata is Bharata. Mahabharata Bharata. Bharata Varsha Bharata. He's not a failure. Bharata is the greatest bhakta. And this deer is a part of his bhakti. But the road to perfection is not always straight and is not always greased and slick. It's not always easy. Especially the road to the highest perfections is not one that just comes into your lap. If for Bharata to get the kind of perfection that he should get, he goes through these things. Where if he feels like more intense. I dropped the ball last time. I'm not going to drop it this time. More intense about it. The intensity is important because his goal is emotional. He's a bhakta. He wants an emotional union with the Absolute. So to agitate his emotions is very important. Hopefully that's clear or relevant. The image of a sage finding himself reborn as a deer is somehow comical, especially when he says, "Oh, kashtam." Oh, what a pain. Let me see. Alf has a question. Can any karma be done, good or bad, as an animal? Not really. People don't really understand this. And it's not only as an animal, but outside of the human beings, even as a deva, etc. There's very little karma done, good or bad. The human being is the karma machine. The human being generates all the karma, and all the other species are the results of that karma. Why? Why is that? What is karma? Karma is an action. So, don't these animals perform actions? Not really. They don't really make a plan. They just enjoy their life, experience their life, and go along with the script. That's basically how animals live. They're going along with a natural script. That's why when we look at them, we think, oh, they're so in harmony with nature, because they're following the script. It's time to move. The clouds just moved over here. The sun just went over here. It's time to go. Let's go. Boom. Tweet, 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 tweet. It's time to mate. Okay, let's mate. It's time not to mate. Okay, let's not mate. What human acts like that? It doesn't work like that for human beings. Human beings have plans. And because of our plans of what we want to achieve, we do various things and we do them in a certain order. But animals don't act like that, and gods don't act like that either. So those are called the karmapala kshetras. Those forms of life, they are forms of life in which you experience the results of actions. But the human form of life is not really the form of life where you experience results as much as the form of life where you generate results. And that's why the intellect is developed to the point that it is. So that you can plan, make plans, and think about goals that you want to achieve, and think about the right actions to get to the goals. Of course, the animals do it a little bit, and we get very surprised. Honestly, maybe not at all. I mean, for example, you can put up a puzzle in front of a crow, and the crow could solve the puzzle. But that doesn't mean that they make plans, and then they have an ambition to go. There's no crow that's planning to overthrow the neighboring crow tribe because they want the land and the crow girls. They don't act like that. They don't think like that. So it's difficult to do any karma as an animal or a demigod, though it's not impossible. So, for example, he did what he could do when he was a deer, which was the way he control his diet. In the loop, does this have anything to do with Mrigashirsa people in an astrology context? I guess maybe anything that has to do with the deer has to do with Mrigashirsa people. That's it, Ruchira. Mananam nidis. I can never pronounce this. Nididhyasanam. Manasam nididhyasanam. That's the thing I was talking about. How do you not forget things? Isn't love always pure? No, it's almost never pure. If love was almost always pure, then there would be no problems at all. No, love is not pure ever in this world, full of people with needs. What is love anyway? Anyabhilashta shunyam jnana karma dinavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhakti uttamam. Love is when you want for the beloved, not for the self. And all of your expressions and all of your actions are for the wants of the beloved, and none of them are for the wants of the self. That doesn't exist. And the only way that can exist is if the beloved is the self. Because otherwise, the self interferes in the love. But if you eradicate the self, then there's no lover. So the only way is if the beloved is the self. But if the self and the lover and the self are identical, then there's also no love. You can't transfer. So the self, the actual beloved, has to be the self of the self. The Atma of the Atma. The core of the self, the true self. That's what we refer to by Vishnu. That's why the pure love doesn't exist unless the beloved is Vishnu. Love is not always pure, but love is always good. even semblances of love is always good. Affection is good because it tends towards love. It leads towards love. That's why. That's what we said. That's what Shukadev said about the deer. He called it Suarabdha karma. Good karma. He said that Bharata meeting this deer was his good karma. So I don't know why people want to write stories about this being a negative affair. But Shuka says his encounter with the deer was good karma. Why is it good karma? He explained, otherwise why would he have affection? Affection is good karma, hatred is bad karma. But if the concept of purity comes in, there's no pure love. Pure love is what everybody needs and wants. Flatlander, I want to remember what I learned about Bhagavan in my next life. If you want that, then you will. It's just a question of what we say we want, or what we really want. Here's an interesting question. Hey, there's actually a lot of questions. It is said that he made that mistake because he had no sadhu sangha or satsanga. What do you think of this? I don't know who says that. Then every sage who goes to Vivikta, Japanese mixing with Sanskrit, Vivikta sthana, anybody who goes to a solitary place should have the same problem that Bharata had. No? Yes? Yes. I wish people wouldn't speculate, especially amongst the people who claim that they are so against speculation. If Bharata had this problem, which Shukadev doesn't say is a problem, but if he had a problem because he didn't have sangha, because he lived alone in a forest, well, that's a widespread practice. That sadhus go live alone in a forest. So then that whole widespread practice should be faulty. And if so, then we should see widespread incidents similar or identical to Bharata's, which we do not. So just use your head. In fact, he doesn't want sadhu sangha. He doesn't want sangha. Did Rishabhadev want sangha? Sureka Devi Studio says, why was Bharata not able to discern with full certainty that the deer was Hari? Mistake? Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe that's the problem. There was one word where Shukadev said he took it too far. He went above and beyond what his duty. He made the point that Sharanyopeksha dosha vidush. It's a very great flaw for anyone, whether you're living in civilization or whether you're living in a forest. It's a very great flaw to ignore somebody who needs you. That's what Bharata said to himself. Therefore, I'll take care of this deer. But then Shuka's comment was, yes, but he took this very far. He could have taken care of this deer without becoming completely obsessed with the deer. That's one interesting thing that Shuka said. That's kind of like, it's a little bit critical of Bharata. That's about the most critical that Shuka gets of Bharata, is that he took it too far. I mean, probably this deer was the most cutest thing you can imagine. Deer, any old deer is cute. Now, a deer manifesting by Hari's will as your good karma. Imagine this special deer. It's like even a regular deer is cute. Baby deer. And these deer, the only thing that's not cute about them is that they run away from you all the time. But imagine a deer that like thinks you're his mom. That is cute. And cute is real. I mean, cute has effect. So why did Bharata, go too far? Because his deer is cute. That's my uninformed opinion. Mona Lisa, maybe he also deepened his devotion by extending it to something that couldn't be seen as less than his own kind, so that it would follow that everyone is deserving. And that's a good lesson also. That's indeed a good lesson. That's a very important part of his story, is when he says, Sharanyo Peksha Dosha Vidush. A person that takes care of you. And the other part where he said that taking care of the person who needs you is more important than taking care of your own goals, whatever your goals are. But the thing that he didn't think about was, what about Hari? Doesn't Hari need me? Because actually Hari needs you, wants you. So he didn't really think enough that Hari needed me. This is the part that he would not have gotten before. I would say this is the part that he wouldn't have gotten if this deer didn't show up. He would have gotten his enlightenment without that sense of passion and intimacy and equality with Hari. It would have been a reverential experience, a reverential enlightenment. But I think what he's going to understand is just that this deer needs me. Hari needs me. I shouldn't have. I already had. This is the thing. If I'm married and another girl comes up and says, Sharanyo Peksha Dosha Vidusha, I'm going to say, sorry, I already have a Sharanya. And I'm not allowed to. So you're not my Sharanya, go somewhere else. Do you understand? I already have a wife. So if somebody else comes up and says, I want to be your wife, and you're not allowed to, you shouldn't neglect somebody who wants to take shelter of you, I'll say, sorry, I'm already full. The hotel is full. Believe me, this hotel is full. We have enough kids here. The hotel's full. I already have my Sharanyas and you don't fit in this puzzle. So no, you're not my Sharanya. You go away. So he didn't think that way. He should have thought that way. But he didn't realize that Hari is his Sharanyaka. He was just thinking, I'm Hari's Sharanya. This is the difference between Bhakti and Prem Bhakti. Bhakti and Bhakti. When you just realize that you're dependent upon Hari, that's Bhakti. But when you realize that Hari is dependent on your love, that is very, very, very much more intense. So if he would have thought, Hari needs me, I have I'm taking care of Hari, then he would have saw the deer, he would have said, I don't know, I'm already taken. Now, I can do what I can do for you. I can pull you out of the water and I can give you some food, but you can't become the love of my life. Because I already have a love of my life that needs me to be the love of their life. Then that's what Shuka was talking about when he said he did the right thing, but he took it too far. I didn't see your question, Enima. So I can't even say if it was dumb. Okay, so that'll be it for today. That was a very interesting thing. Thank you very much for your company and for this Bhagavad Seva. Thank you.